guys, we're about ready to start. Thanks for joining us. While you're listening in, did you guys get the emails of the supplemental documents?
Yes, we got your list of amendments.
Okay.
We're looking at them right now.
We'll talk about them as we move into the meeting. Okay, take it outside if you got to keep talking. Sorry for being so brusque, but we have 1 hour, 12 to 1 on the discussions. The mayor here? You want to sit there or here?
Yeah, no, I'm going to join my colleague from the budget office.
Outstanding. Should do attendance. Are we recording or are we live? So we'll take attendance. Mike?
Mike Gutierrez, Assembly.
Patrick Flynn, Assembly.
Dick Drainey, Assembly.
Bill Starr, Assembly.
Jennifer Johnson, Assembly.
Ernie Hall, Assembly.
Paul Loman, Assembly.
And on the call.
Bobby Gray Jackson, Assembly. Harriet Drummond, Assembly.
Got it. I wanted to first be clear on what we're doing today, and I'll get to that in just a second, but my demeanor is typically one that kind of is very critical of folks, and I want to get out of character on that. Part of why you see me do that is because I'm very serious at this. What I want to make sure today we emphasize is the thanks that got us to how we can have this conversation today, which would be sort of civil. You also have a S version that's been prepared and circulated as of yesterday. That's good stuff because that takes away the discussions that I just saw this or were not prepared or laying a big document on the table the night of a meeting isn't helpful. And I want to emphasize that because that gives us an opportunity to look at topics with a little bit of time and a little bit of cushion as we deliberate now as a body. So I put that thanks out there primarily to the mayor on his direction to his staff. It's been an interesting week for me, which started last Saturday as chair of Budget and Finance. One of the tasks I have is to function as the clearinghouse with my committee, the administration, the other assembly members, and process and bring the amendment process and the dialogue and speak to sort of a product to discuss on Tuesday. You can be critical on how that happened or what it happened to, but right now I think that the primary thanks is to the mayor and Cheryl Frasca, who were on speed dial. So I'll put that out there for that, and I think the community should be thankful as well because I felt a listening ear and an understanding that the mayor listened in on the work sessions as well. We had 3 of them. They were very well attended. I think that the assembly has a task at hand, which we'll cover. So the thanks goes on the table first because it's easily forgotten as we move into the serious business. I think today what I'd like to discuss is that the S version is on the table. I don't anticipate or we're not going to do a recap of it. The assembly members here are highly skilled at it. We've seen the original version, so in terms of a synopsis from myself or from OMB, you're not gonna have that presented to you in the spoon-fed situation today. I do want to bring you up to speed as it relates to the operating budget and things that are perhaps still of question or of things that you're liable to see the assembly tasked with as it becomes to debate and deliberation. There obviously will be more, but there are still some unanswered questions. In terms of the capital, you'll see the packet also has where there's no S version of the capital budget out yet. That's sort of a work in progress. You'll see attached in here is an ongoing list of amendments to the capital budget as it stands right now. Ultimately, but between now and Tuesday, we'll have to lock that down, turn it into a legislative packet, approve our CIB and P products, as well as the enterprise budgets. There are some amendments in here. Basically, the yellow sheet summarizes amendments. Basically, our committee, I should say, was expanded to include Patrick Flynn, who coordinated dialogues and discussions with the enterprise through forums there. Also entertained in here is, if you didn't see it, the copy of the BAC report. I don't see them here, but the Budget Advisory Commission had a significant weight and produced us a pretty nice 60-page report for consult and deliberation. What I see, and I had challenges with this year in particular as we related to that, is on the one hand we had as you call, luxury of additional revenue to talk about and debate as we move forward after we approve the tobacco tax is really what I'm talking about. So some of what we had to do as a process with the administration and the work team committee here was figure out the distribution of that revenue based on the power points and the feel of the body. The other thing that we have in front of us, as you're aware of, is the S version. The S version will be handed out in just a second. On the fees and the fines, as it's been called, the fees and the fines discussion was also in the background throughout this discussion, primarily because the fees and the fines assumptions are built into the budget numbers in some capacity. So the Assembly has those actions to process in conjunction with coming up with an appropriate budget. And then finally, there's also a reconsideration item from last meeting where I pulled an item out for further discussion as it relates to additional funding sources for the budget. So we've had our task at hand, as well as testimony, which was well handled through the chair with 3 public testimonies versus our required 1. I will say that as you go back through, and Barbara is not here, our clerk, we're required to pass the budget by the 7th. We have an opportunity to do that at this meeting. If we can't come to collective speak on the budget, we're required to have another public hearing based on our charter requirements between now and when we could vote on it. So there's not a lot of pressure built into that, but it's even more important that we do diligence to reach consensus by, in my opinion, by Tuesday, the 7th. I'm happy to have that understanding up to the point of now it needs to get to the meat of what we're trying to talk about here. And I want to start with the amendment packet in particular. And you'll see that based here with the pre-numbering of them. And I'm starting out front here with the ideas that we have some unresolved issues, things that couldn't be accommodated in the S version through deliberation, debate. The dollars were high or the priorities weren't there. And, you know, I'll speak directly. It is a process driven by committee, but ultimately I have to function as a clearinghouse. And personally, what I've tried to not do is put Bill Starr's will on the table here with that. And I want to tell you how that happened. It was with meetings with chief of staff, with the mayor, with our committee. Went to informal meetings with that. Worked the phones heavy. All in a spirit of not trying to say this is where we have the votes lined up. I want to be clear in that. That's not what we're doing here. What I'm trying to put forth is where I felt consensus and understanding. These are still unresolved issues. And I don't want to debate them today necessarily because we have work to do here, but it's likely that we'll see some transit discussions based on Amendment 1, and you'll see Amendment 2 are similar. We've got basically a restoral of transit dollars over and above what we've already agreed in with the administration, a restoral of anchor rides funding as it's presented in the S version. Another unresolved topic is the library at Sampson Diamond. This will be amendment number 3 that basically has some support, but there's not enough, in my opinion, to be able to move a funding source directly to it. I see thus needing to have a further discussion if that amendment moves to the floor. Amendment number 4 is an Upper Hill or East Side District Plan.
Can I ask questions as you go?
Sure, if you'd like.
All right. I'm going to need a little more clarification on what is in and is not in the Assembly budget.
Okay.
The whole discussion about the FCC,
Right.
we've got to clear up. And I note that on the amendment that Patrick's offered on the library, he's talking about his office account. So it'd be helpful to know what's in there and what's not in there before we get into those discussions.
Yeah, and I apologize. I wrote this a little bit awkwardly. What I intended to say with this amendment, in both the amendments on the public transit and on the library, was that I contribute some money from my office account to complement the other dollars.
Well, I appreciate that, and I might do the same, but I don't really have a clue what's in there.
Yeah, I think we had the same account as last year, correct?
The Assembly budget is basically unchanged, and go ahead.
Jacqueline, can you tell them?
Each of you have $9,000. Flynn's is already decreased by a certain amount that he transferred over to meals, which is considered miscellaneous.
Can we tell them
But
relatively shortly how much is
However,
exactly in there?
his
Yes.
is already, I don't remember how much
I don't use very much of it, so there's plenty
he
left.
doesn't have an aid currently.
Well, in the overall speak on the Assembly budget,
Hers is fully funded at $9,000.
Yeah, but we need more than that. We need to know about the FCC.
I understand the funding expectation as it's presented line item in the Assembly budget for FCC is $80,000. That's what started. That's not a change in the S version or not. That's basically the number that's that was initially presented, and, you
So
know,
it's carryover.
it's a carryover, as is almost the entire assembly budget,
That's what I thought. It
Yeah.
was just basically the same.
It is.
Okay,
to answer your question there. So,
thank you.
speaking to Amendment 4, there's other discussions that probably need to take place on that. That wasn't one that I felt it was very specific to that, and Mr. Gutierrez and Mr. Honeman can move it, talk about it, or present it accordingly. As the Sampson Diamond Library Amendment, I'm sure we have opinions on that. There was some overlap in the amendments tendered for fire station restoral. Basically, amendments 5 and 6 are real close to doing the same thing as 7 and 8 are, which is the Eagle River and the Upper Hillside references to that. I think that this similarity is only driven by the amount of money appropriated, but the dollars are pretty close. I wanted to make sure the intention was that, but as you'll see in the comments above, these amendments start where these are included in the S version already. There's no need to move the amendment, if you will, unless the amount doesn't appear correct in the S version. So you're going to see, as you reference your S version documents, the funding levels are pretty clearly spelled out for those two action items.
Could I ask a
Sure,
comment?
then.
Paul, you've got a different figure for the reinstatement of the trucks than the city administration has. Can
Right,
you
and I want to make sure that that's accurate, so that's something I'll flesh out a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
And again, 9, 9 speaks to project access. LV, are you on the line here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yep, number 9 is an assumption that you've had some discussions with the mayor's office and the focus on the community grants program. Are you comfortable with that conversation?
I'm comfortable with the fact that it's my understanding that Project Access is probably going to be funded.
Yeah. I just wanted to have an opportunity at the work session to talk about that. You'll notice that the funding levels for the community grants program has increased and significantly increased. Again, with the mayoral's office taken over charge of that, we've moved that procedurally from the manager's office over to more of a committee structure in the mayor's office, with the expectation that these folks will apply and have fair game for that. But the numbers are up significantly, both for amendment number 9 and the arts amendments later on. So if you need to move that to clarity on the funding source, let us know, Elvie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I could, Elvia, it would help me to know if you are going to line item it or just have it included in the grants discussion.
Well, I want to make sure that funding occurs. Okay? And through conversations that I had with both Mr. Baker and our chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, it's my understanding that will likely happen.
Well, I mean, the process will be like with
Dan?
community grants is that there's applications and there's a process. We review them, we rank them. We're going to bring them back to the assembly so that you can see what we've done and ranked, and that'll be the process. So it's up to them then to apply once it comes into.
Right, and I believe that they already have applied.
Well, frankly, Elvie, the reason I'm asking is my vote would probably be dependent upon how you did it. And that's why it would be helpful to know.
So to clarify, Mr. Chairman, basically we've added an increment of $20,000 to the community grants fund with the expectation Project Access will apply, and the hope is that they will be selected for some source of money.
And I'll regress a little bit. Thank you, Elvie. Are you done?
For now I am. Thank you, Mr.
Now,
Chairman.
I want to talk about that appropriation process of community grants and some of the policy decisions that Mr. Chairman started here, Chairman Trainee, along with our committee speak, is that it's difficult for us to be in the individual position to earmark. It is for me, and I'll pontificate a little bit on why that is because you have so many needs that come at every assembly members, and I think the idea is that we would have a knowledge base that they're an appropriate nonprofit status, or that they represent their board when they come to us and apply. this takes all of the process out of it for us and ultimately becomes the mayor's policy statement on how does he want to distribute the money. I would like to, and I'll be one that tries to move away from specific earmarks. And you'll notice in the S version, Covenant House now is moved with the intention that it's inside that granting program as well. I think that should be open speak. I'm comforted in knowing that there's a committee involved at the mayor's level as that would apply with the chief of staff, Mr. Rada from Parks, and there's one more is how it was described to me from the administration. The other policy statement that we sent a clear message is that we would like to see that list propagated as an assembly body. That was Mr. Trainey's request, and I think that debate is there. If we see something that we thought was going to be in terms of the discussion we furthered with Mr. Flynn was his arts grants that he's brought forth could be amended, or is he comfortable with the expectation that the arts will submit their programs in a packaged manner that equates into, some distribution of money. I mean, there's a little bit of faith here that the mayor's office is going to follow through on those commitments that he's made. There's no question about that. I'll be upset if we've made commitments to these folks like Project Access through LV and they don't happen. But earmarking and line item, I think it puts us back into an area that's difficult for me. And I heard it from other committee members as well as the administration.
Bill, I apologize, I keep talking.
Yeah, no, go up there. This is what it's about. I just don't want to run along.
The other thing that just come up to my attention fairly recently is Anchorage Youth Court. And my basic understanding of this approach and the increase in the grant funding, and so currently I'm online, I think, to encourage Anchorage Youth Court to apply for the grant process. So are we all kind of in line envisioning that would be the appropriate venue for that?
I am, Debbie.
Now that communication from Anchorage Youth Court, I think, came to us fairly late in
2
the
days
process. So, I'm perfectly acceptable with that, Debbie, and we can make a note on it, or we can move an amendment number that does that. I will tell you right now that there is if they're looking for the $20,000 that they sent in their email, there is that amount in that summary. We had redistributed a little extra money into that grants program because I wasn't sure on Patrick's number for arts.
Okay.
And again, we can go with a line item list if you want to say 137.5.
Well, no, I think the process is fair, but I just, I've got my little group there.
We all do.
Anchorage Youth Court is great.
Yeah. Well, and
And
again,
Youth Court, Mr. Chairman, because it's a little unusual, they have, a direct appropriation from the Department of Health and Human Services.
right.
That was 95,000, is now 75,000, so.
No, it's 95 now.
95 now.
Yeah.
If they had 150.
Mr. Chairman?
That's what I meant, another 20 added to the 95. So they're a little different than most of the grants we're talking about, and I suppose if we were to be ultimately fair, we'd remove them from Health and Human Services and put them totally into the community grant.
We
request
talked for a
program.
while, some years ago, about putting them in with police, actually.
Yeah, they've hopscotched a little bit.
Yeah, Elvie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make note that I totally support funding for youth court also. And the appropriation isn't through Health and Human Services, the grant's through Health and Human Services. And in terms of the Project Access grant, like I mentioned earlier, we have had conversations, and I feel confident that they have probably already applied for a grant, and I feel confident that they will probably be successful in their request. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Elvie. Moving on to amendment number 10. Again, you'll also see that the public transportation portion for anchor rides reached enough consensus and understanding both on the administrative side and what I felt we heard through amendments that this one is also noted as included in the S version. Parks and Rec, the $40,866. Again, both of these amendments, 10 and 11, are moved by committee. That's enough consensus. I think we heard, or at least our committee heard that there was enough movement there, and there's nobody individually named on 10 and 11. It's a committee move that's already been incorporated in the S version, as well as I'm certain supported by the administration. So they could have sponsored the amendment and in fact sort of did. The arts funding through number 12, again, this is the same conversation that we had with the discussion about, 20,000 here, that. The expectation is that there was already some funding in the community grants program, whether you want to put in quotes earmarked or not. Again, it's how well these groups package themselves. Do they meet the criterion of a legitimate entity? Are they board supported? Are they decision-making supported? Leave that up to the mayor's office, I think, to flesh all that out and then write the checks appropriately once we see the master list. So 52.5 is Mr. Flynn's comments to the committee that said, hey, let's get that one back up there. We're hearing from the community. And that's also moved by the administration. FCC, Mr. Trainee again talks about full funding, and the budget remains unchanged. And you can bring it.
I have to, because this amendment is incorrect.
Math error, Debbie.
No, it's department error,
Well, okay,
because it should be assembly,
all right.
correct?
Yes, it is. It's currently in the S version under the Assembly's budget.
Yeah,
But
not the
if
mayor's
it's,
office.
okay, I'm sorry, I'm still confused. So does it show an additional 50,000 above?
It should be bringing it up to 80,000 as a complete appropriation to Federation. Because the
From-
initial one, when we first did it, showed 30,000. And through the tobacco tax, I've tried to add another 50 into it to bring them up to 80,000.
Okay, is the S budget show that correct
We'll take a look
department?
at it.
Do you know? Do you remember, Cheryl?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Osander, as the draft that's before you has it going to the community grants program, which is what I thought the decision was, but it's easily changed. If what you want to do
I want to
is add
change
to
it
the
to direct
assemblies-
appropriation to
to the
Federation.
assemblies, to the Federation, via which department?
The assembly budget, I think.
The assembly budget.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Elvie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anyway, and Ms. Frascas is aware of this. The 30,000 is currently in the Assembly's budget, so it makes sense that the 50 be a line item to increase the FCC and the Assembly's budget
Right.
by that amount. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I apologize. Does this mean the total assembly budget increases in size or stays the same?
Stays the same.
Thank you. All right.
However, FCC is funded at 80,000 in it.
All right, so then we have 50,000 more in the grant. So there needs to be an amendment to take that out or do something.
We'll get the S version fixed.
We'll get Cheryl to work on this
All right,
version.
sounds good.
It was late in
Remember in
breaking
years
math.
past when we were voting on the assembly and we were saying, okay, Cheryl, figure out all the numbers and give us the amendments as we move money around.
Well, when you
Get this
recognize the
done.
task is 435 million in sum, getting all the exact numbers in the exact right box, it's not a disclaimer for that, but there were some challenges in absolutely understanding quickly what was included and what wasn't. But I think we've got that. Amendment 14 is an open discussion. I prefaced the meeting with a discussion about the reconsideration item that we pulled back. Mr. Hall and I reconsidered an item that has an opportunity to redirect some funds if the Assembly so chooses. And I've engaged Mr. Honeman for a lot of different reasons, and he's been very, very helpful with trying to secure some legitimate, solid funding for the declaration that we want to have a police academy in 2011. And Mayor, here's where it comes. This is a conversation we've carried from Saturday all the way through to today. It's your intention to have a police academy in the latter half of 2011. Can you expound on where you see that and how you see it happening?
We made that commitment. It kind of depends on what we see at first quarter, of course, so we get a better picture of what our revenues are like, how we've done with the state, fund balance reports, all that kind of stuff. And then we have to look, of course, forward to 2012. Our projection right now is a $12 to $15 million deficit in 2012. So we've got to look really hard about where you can add personnel and at what level. So the goal was hopefully that we manage attrition to where we don't get below a certain level, and we're hoping to use kind of the lateral academy process as well, where we fill in and not particularly have a giant new class coming forward that maybe we're not able to maintain as an operating budget item. So we're still working on the details. We do want to make sure that we don't attrition too low in the police department, and so the details of just what kind of academy still to be sketched out, Mr. Chairman. But
You're committed to working it through. What we want to do next Tuesday, appropriation of the additional money so far, starting the process to sequester dollars. And again, that forfeiture account, which you've talked about, is 800,000. We've worked it out. Paul's done diligence working with the Department of Justice to make sure that we don't overstep our bounds in supplanting money. But it's our intention to start to appropriate those dollars, with the first big chunk moving over on Tuesday would be what I'd like to see approved. And then we need to talk hard dollars the first quarter when you flesh out that budget number
We do.
and commit to it. That's not hard to speak for me, but that's why I'm saying it so clearly, is that's my understanding, and I want the rest of the body to hear where that discussion has gone. Mr. Honeman, do you have anything to add to how that's going to play out in your opinion?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, if you'll see on the amendment that's actually, the sheet is listed as $525,000. That was at a figure number of 20. That's optimally what we're hoping to secure is 20 new positions. If we all say 20 new, it's essentially to address the attrition that we've been having since the last academy in 2008. In essence, the preparation costs, if you look in the column of 2011, the first three figures you'll see is advertising, ammunition, and like a site test and background check, and that's just under the $300,000 mark, which we think would get covered fairly well in the DOJ forfeiture money. The outfitting or uniforms and equipment, you wouldn't necessarily need the full set of equipment because these folks would be in training for about a 5-month period if it's brand new. If it's lateral, there are some provisions where it could come in at a lesser period of time for training. So you may have to outfit a few more earlier 2011 and be ready for them to hit the street in early 2012 for field training. Same thing goes with cars. The vehicle cost is actually shoved in to 2012. I might add, some of these are other numbers, and I wouldn't be too concerned so much about the bigger number total-wise for 2012, but it has to be addressed, of course, the mayor's right. What is it going to look like in 2012? But we have to recognize that some of these costs in the past, when the budget build, haven't really been discussed as to some of the, like, what is the vehicle cost, the MDC, the actual handgun or a shotgun. I mean, these are items that, when you talk about salary and benefits, that's one position, but that's one angle of it. And it really does include a lot more than just that. So the numbers here, what I could see happening is on Tuesday we could appropriate the dollars for the pre-hire building for the academy, and then perhaps budgeting for the positions for the fourth quarter of 2012, and then address any adjustments at first quarter budget. Third quarter, fourth quarter of 2011, and adjusting at the.
Yeah, and some of the process, thanks for the summary, some of the processes, those that are listening in particular, and first time at the rodeo, I know you use that with some terminology, is that we have to be certain that our revenue forecasts align with our expenses this year, and we're already cognizant of some legal obligations. I've been talking about Fund 181, there's other things, so we feel confident, but those discussions are hard to have right now until you see the numbers gel and the auditors do their work. So I'm real appreciative of you taking that on. Mr. Gutierrez, you're right in there too. I see the email chains and all of that. So keep at it, because I want this solution as clear as mud here by Tuesday.
Mr. Chair, if I could just a quick comment. You mentioned that Assemblymember Honeman had been in contact with the Department of Justice, and as you know, our municipal attorney has.
Dennis Wheeler too, sure.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that we're all talking with each other.
Well, we're on the same task at hand, and I maybe paraphrase that, but I'm pretty sure that's the allowable use is still intact as it relates to the supplanting of dollars. That's the key term here, is that we have to be certain of that, and I think so far we're not doing anything in an illegal sense with that appropriation so far. More debate, obviously, on the reconsideration come Tuesday. Is there any more speak as it relates? Go ahead, Debbie.
I want to understand a little better. The reconsideration potentially frees up $800,000 to use for an academy. Is that the general consensus? No, it is not.
300 of the 800.
300 of the 800.
Well, my intention, and we haven't, it's sort of why I brought up that sarcastic statement, as clear as mud today, but the point is, I will probably move 400,000 of the 800, Debbie. And
Okay.
I don't have the exact allocation appropriation for that. I'm trying to work that out with Lucinda on accounts, and Paul and I have spoken this morning, just how much do you think is appropriate to move right now? I think the key is that it's a significant amount of money, and it establishes the sense that we are focused on bringing that public safety arm into play fourth quarter of 11. And here's some money.
Okay, so Paul, with your amendment, you're assuming that 400,000 plus you want another 525 to bring it to about 925.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. So
Okay, which
basically-
is short of the figure you have there.
Right, and that's where I think when we get to by first quarter budget revision, as the mayor's have identified what's the fund balance is left over, state
Okay.
funding that comes through, I think that's where first quarter we'd have to
Thank
adjust
you.
it.
Go ahead,
As
Mr.
long as
Chairman.
the PCNs are identified, that OMB has the money, that they know by fourth quarter. Again, if you can't find enough academy recruits by October, then maybe you delay it to November, you've saved another month
Thank
or
you,
something.
I just didn't understand that. Thank
Just
you.
to let you know that I've changed the agenda, so the item that comes up as item 11A on the 7th is the reconsideration. Because we gotta take these things in sequence.
Sure.
So the first thing will be the reconsideration, and then we move on to fines and fees, then we move on to the overall budget.
Okay.
So on your agenda, I've changed it, just wanted you to know.
Anything else on the operating side of the S discussion that we want to talk about today? Obviously, at work sessions, we don't take action or disclose too much of our positions, but the S version's out in front of you as of yesterday. It's in your packets, and we're off and running to make decisions come Tuesday, I hope. The next one is going to be the fees and the fines S version. I think it's appropriate to take a minute in between all of this to talk about where we're at with the S version on that. I don't want the whole work session to be fees and fines, but I want you to know the S version out to consider. The S version of fees and fines is done. And so I think that's appropriate. I haven't seen it, other than the expectations are that some of the funding,
We're gonna get it.
yeah, some of the funding is in this operating budget. That's why we need to act on both. So we have to approve fees and fines in conjunction with the operating budget,
Before we approve the operating.
most likely. So
No, it will. Well, put your budget out of balance.
it would. We want to have a balanced budget. Again, Cheryl, thanks for getting this to us now as opposed to a late on the table item for discussions on the S1. Where we're at with the CIB, it's this green sheet, if you guys want to drift into discussions on this. We don't have in front of us an S version per se of the capital budget, but we will have one before we act on it Tuesday. This is a rolling list. Cheryl, can you tell us how you put this together?
Before we get to that, Mr. Chairman, as everybody gets these, if you want us to walk through the key changes, we can do that so there's no misunderstanding or somebody doesn't read it over the weekend and catch what the key changes might be. We're prepared to do that if you want, so. up to you.
Yeah, I don't, can we come back to it if people have questions?
Or maybe an email from Ms. Frasca to the body would be
And it's
useful.
very.
There is a page
The
that's,
column, far right column, S1 comments, that'll tell you what's changed from the version we had
Okay.
previously. So it's easy to track.
Okay, thank you.
And it correlates with the S1 version. There's retractions in the fees and increases from transit, for example, that pick up in your S1 operating budget. You can clearly see those that have been now deleted, for example, out of the S1 fees and fines. So, that's how the money shakes out. That's why I'm not sure we have the time for that. But Cheryl, can you explain to us the green sheet?
Chairman, can I ask a quick?
Yeah.
A legal question. Looking at the title, and I know the aircraft have been completely pulled out of this, yet aircraft are still referenced in the title. How do we get away with not having to have a title change?
Well, generally, once you have the title, you're stuck with the title.
Right.
So,
And the title has to accurately reflect the contents of the ordinance. No?
But how about if I answer that?
Please.
The rule on the title is that as long as the items that the title needs to reflect all the items that were originally in there. It's anticipated going in that the assembly and body, after hearing public testimony, can delete things. What you can't do is add things that are in the title, that are not in the title.
Fair enough,
This
thank
is
you.
what
You
the S
agree?
version.
Thank you, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chairman.
Cheryl, and explain to us this running list, if that's what it's called.
Sure. This represents changes to the 2011 capital budget, right? And the column called project as proposed means it was a project that was in the proposed capital budget. The amendment column are things that we're proposing to be changed, and then the total for that project. It represents the requests that we received from assembly members, and those are noted in the amendment requester column on the far left. as well as projects that are proposed for the legislative package. So we had some, anyway. So it's a compilation of all those things.
And it's by design intended to sort of stay open here for another couple of days, if you will, use that term, stay open, because I think Jennifer just Ms. Johnson sent in an amendment here this morning. And then I guess I would encourage all of us to go back to our various boards and community council presidents and really flesh the numbers out. I've done that with our parks group, for example, to make sure that what their list in funding source and dollars and all that matters, so that when we lock that down both into a capital project listing as well as the legislative priorities, we're all on the same page. So sometime, Tuesday, you'll give us the S version?
Well, if we could have a deadline of Monday close of business for any changes, and then of course you have the option of proposing amendments on the floor, of course.
Yes.
But in terms of an S version, it would be nice to wrap it up so we can do all the numbers.
Monday afternoon at 3.
That would be great.
That'll be closed 3 o'clock Monday, if you guys can confirm the capital stuff. We'll lock that down, and then of course, as the operating budget, Cheryl's correct, feel free to move amendments as you need to make up for that. Any questions on the CF? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question. We have 5 million in the proposed legislative program for LUSAC, and we appear to be deleting it from CIB.
There was two projects.
There's a duplication.
Yeah. The second one is under, that's where we deleted it, and then it should be under the library.
Again, perhaps more reason to flesh out the discussion
Yeah.
individually here to make sure it reads right. And I commend Cheryl for keeping up with the moving target, because we've changed it and added and deleted.
If you could get back to that.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I need to clarify that this is a list where there's changes. If it's not on this list, it stays in the CIB. So it's not a comprehensive list.
Yes. In other words, we may have it somewhere else.
Because there was no change to the second project, it's not on here.
And if you're looking at your legislative package, you'll see that LUSAC is listed, of course, under Project 80's renewals, but it's also listed under library, so it was listed twice.
Any other questions on process relates to CIB and the budget for that capital projects?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the process was, because interestingly enough, there's not a single project on here in East Anchorage.
Well, Mr. Chair, again, this is just the
Just the
amendment.
changes.
These are
These
changes.
are changes.
Lots of East Anchorage projects in the
You
list.
need to go to the
Yeah,
capital
your
book.
primary book is still the remaining intact. This isn't the only list. It's additions to the list.
Just got my heart racing a little bit.
And most of the changes really are ones that were submitted for legislative consideration to the state, and now we're just making sure that they're included in the CIP as well.
Correct.
So,
Well, we have that legislative packet to approve at the assembly level sometime, don't we?
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Any more comments about the capital side of the budget discussions? And then I guess we'll move into enterprise. Patrick, do you want to tell us where we're at? I think the committee discussion to expand enterprise discussions, in addition to the BAC going out and doing interviews, I want to commend Patrick for taking that on. Sometimes it's a item that we just sort of take advantage of and go with it. So Patrick, can you tell us what the yellow sheet's kind of about?
Mr. Chairman, just before you dash off to that, one other thing on the green sheet.
Yes.
One that we're re-scrutinizing is the South Central Law Enforcement Tactical Range. It appeared in our legislative package as a $17 million request to the state, and you can see that's been reduced to $1.5 million. We're gonna do a scope, a design. I mean, this was a project that was already on the books when we came on board, and we're finding that price tag is that sticker shock for a lot of people out there, and so we're gonna rescope that project. So that's why you see that one changing from 17 million to 1.5 million.
I'm sure the assembly is really supportive of that though, and we want to see that project go through.
Mr. Chairman,
Not to say it's in my backyard.
Well, the assembly members are authorized to use it, I have no problem with that.
Long gun 50 cal, yeah. Well, it is a carry forward project, and I only want to entertain that, is that I like the project. So
Yeah.
between now, I have to say that now, is that
Sure.
rethinking it doesn't mean deleting it.
No, absolutely not.
Thank
We just, the $17 million price tag got a lot of people's attention, and we want to make sure that we can
Well,
justify
in
true
talking with
cost for
Deputy
it.
Chief Smith, as you have, it has reduced its size a little bit. We had multi-agency function requirements in there before, as you know, TSA, Homeland Security, the CIA, FBI. There are less players now in the topic and more site-specific to us, and I can understand the reduction in the scope of what that project's all about. I will say that Aklutna is still on board, talking with the chairman.
We met with them yesterday.
Curtis McQueen, and you met yesterday, so energies are put forward. Thank you for that.
And just wanted to point out that probably part of the sticker shock, Mr. Mayor, if you would, is this, as there are some buildings that will need to be constructed for instruction, of course, secured for ammunition and of course weaponry that are out there. So there is more than just a square box.
No, we understand.
Thanks, and thanks for all your help on that.
The, one of the real expensive things in these things is lead capture.
Yes.
The old ranges don't have to have the sophisticated capturing of lead shots.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just want to mention, there's a couple of my amendments here that I'm going to come back with some different numbers.
Monday by 3. Go ahead.
Anyway, three.
Mayor, they might, when they take a look at that construction, they might look at green ammunition being used only, because green ammunition doesn't contain lead. So you can get around the EP lead requirements by going into green ammunition where it's applicable.
Thanks for expanding on that conversation here. Patrick?
Yeah, just a couple of things with the utility or enterprise funds. First, those of you who had the good fortune of sitting with me for 3 hours on this topic will recall that there was a $200,000 increment to the port budget for advertising. And digging into that number a little further, about half of it is intended actually for a contract grant writer to help pursue other funding sources, and some other things. But of that, 30,000 is intended for basically an informational campaign about what the port is and what it does. I think the port tours are another 55 that's in that bucket. And I just felt, while those funds don't directly affect taxpayers per se, every dollar that we take out of port users for port activities are dollars that they pay on shipping costs and so on and so forth. And I just was uncomfortable with leaving that $30,000 there and asking that we remove that. Second part of this, members are all aware of Ms. Mahoney's efforts to establish a new enterprise resource planning system for the city. Concurrently, AWWU is moving forward on a similar project. Those of you who are familiar with that technology are aware that organizations much larger than the municipality, including all of our utilities, and much more complicated than our city and all its utilities, can survive on one ERP system. And so this amendment would back that out of the AWU budget to the tune of almost $1.3 million. And they'll have downstream effects as well. Doing this will probably require us to revisit the tariff approval that we did last month. That I believe Ms. Oceano's amendment said it was subject to the final AWU budget, but we want to clarify what that number actually looks like, either on the 14th or in January.
Yeah, I want to just ask the question, I'm sorry for jumping over the number, but on the AWU numbers, as they've talked about the increases in fee and rates in particular as it relates to the consumer, would this amendment affect the proposed rates?
It's a direct effect, it'll
Yeah,
reduce.
so we would reduce the rate increase is some of your intentions. So.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for the dialogue. Again, I put the thanks out there earlier on, is that sometimes as a budget that gets the 9th hour review, and you've been at it for weeks now, and it's not easy conversations to have, especially with board supported or enterprise funds that are complicated. So thanks for delving into that. And how do you see moving these amendments? I don't mind moving them as a committee as opposed to taking you off the hit list if there is one. We can move them as a committee, or if you want to move them just in friend of the body.
I think I'm already off the Christmas card list of the folks associated with these, but nevertheless, if Ms. Frasca wants to prepare an S version of these two budgets, that might be the easiest way to proceed unless there's current objection from the body.
Well, you represent the committee, so I feel comfortable saying that they're a committee movement, and as such, just decide how you want to present them. I can
We'll
do
bring
it
forth
as
an
well.
S version, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon?
We'll bring forth an S version.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Anything else on the yellow sheet, Patrick?
That's all.
Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
I just wanted to mention, one of the changes we made to the fees was that we took out solid waste services. And there's an opportunity that it will come as a separate item in April.
Right.
But we've asked for some accountability before that, so I know that this budget was designed around having a fee increase, so I'm not sure if you want to address that.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, Ms. Johnson, thank you. The fee increase was anticipated, I believe, to take effect February 1, and so we'll probably need to adjust at least those 2 months out in the S version as well.
At one point, we had April 1st as the,
Right, the original version anticipated February 1st, that was the original fees and fines bill.
And then
We backed it back to April 1st in the S version of the fees and fines bill, we never corrected the underlying budget. So Ms. Johnson's right, we need to make that change.
As we move forward, I think that pretty much summarizes what I wanted to do, and I don't really want to dwell on the fees and the fines discussion. We'll let others, Senate members, take that forward. Just, I want to also make sure that the folks here remember we have a 6-year fiscal plan that needs to be approved. Is that still on the agenda?
It is.
Or, which, you know,
11F or something.
and this is probably my personal opinion, is that when you carry forth the new operating budget numbers with the additional revenues in that, the 6-year fiscal plan has additional pressures on the revenue shortfalls projected for the following year. And I'm happy because I've heard Mr. Honeman did it. We have to look forward to 2012. So the topic may be really interesting to just say, well, we made it through 2011. But when you look at the fiscal plan ramifications on the projected gap, they concern me. Partly because I spent this whole week trying to put the numbers in the right boxes, and it's getting harder and harder every year to be able to effectively do that. So not only look at these budgets, but the guidance and the policy statements coming from this assembly body on the 6-year fiscal plan, as the mayor's presented it, need to really be thought hard, because we've got decisions to make on that. So that's all I need to say. Is there other things that people want to take some time now? We've got 5 minutes.
First of all, I want to thank the mayor's office particularly for addressing the airplane tax. I know that was one of the single individual fees that drew a lot of attention. And I know that merits some good discussion, and I'm eager to find out what more we can discuss on it, because it certainly was one that I heard a lot about. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And keep in mind that we haven't particularly said there's not going to be any increase. What we're looking at is a standardized methodology for how we assess and tax things like commercial boats, commercial airplanes, things of a similar nature. We're not assessing the same manner right now, so
And I did
it may come back before us, but it's just a different form.
And I did make sure everybody I talked to understood that.
LV and Harriet, do you have things to add to the meeting?
I don't. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything to add.
Thanks
No,
for-
I'm fine. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in, you guys. It's helpful. And you have the information electronically to review for the weekend, I take it, right?
Yeah, we have the amendments and we have the S version.
Great. We'll get you fees and fines as an S version electronically, hopefully too, but it's pretty big. So be ready.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
can I just make one comment off subject?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to let everybody know who doesn't know that tomorrow morning at about 9 o'clock, Anchorage, Alaska is going to receive a milestone award from the president of the National League of Cities in front of about 3,000 people for being a member for 50 years.
It's a good commitment. Take that with pride, Elby. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to make mention, Elby Gray Jackson, Mr. Hall, Ms. Johnson, myself, and Mr. Honeman and Patrick make up the compilation of the Budget and Finance Committee as the Assembly empowers us to review matters such as this. So thanks for you guys for taking my calls and dealing with my stress, because I've had such as the days went on. The disclaimer for why I acted inappropriately.
Mr. Stark?
Sure.
Regarding the capital budget,
Yes.
do you want us, based on the amendments we received, to prepare an S version on that as well?
Don't want to waste paper, but, we
It's,
probably need
I
to
do the S
it's
version.
short. The
probably
S
need to have it.
The
Well, I
S
do
version
the S
itself
version
is
now,
short.
so it's ready.
That's the idea, is to have it. Yeah, we'll work that detail out, but Monday by 3 for any changes.
Just talking about the CIP versus
Oh,
the
CIP.
CID.
I didn't hear that.
I have the S version ready to go on Tuesday.
Yes,
Less time.
you guys can.
I will have a CIP amendment. You want that by 3 too then?
my understanding is that by Monday at 3 o'clock, there'll be, you all will submit amendments to the CIB.
Right,
Um,
and you just mentioned the CIP?
No, I said CIB,
Oh, pardon me.
but right now, we don't have any amendments to the CIP. We've been in communication about that.
Any other comments from assembly members?
I do.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Debbie was actually first.
Oh, I'm talking a lot, Ernie. I just wanted to say thank you to Bill and the committee.
That's basically what I want to do on behalf of the entire assembly. Thank you. You've done an incredible job this week. You've kept everybody in the loop. Well done.
Thank
Well
you.
done,
Well,
Mr. Stark.
It's not over till Tuesday.
It's not over, but
I urge that we do it on Tuesday.
It's actually
It's messy if we don't. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Bill, as chairman of the assembly, thank you very much for your effort as our budget chairman. I was about to take you off my phone.
It was hourly calls there, Mr. Chairman, and I
I know.
appreciated that, but I think the integrity was genuine, but.
You did an excellent job, Bill. I mean, couldn't be happier with you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Harriet. Would you please make sure that LV and I get copies of today's handouts
We already
in
have.
our packets?
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate those kudos. Again, the idea is that we all have effective information to make decisions by Tuesday of next week. So there we go. Meeting's closed. Thank you.